United, a young adult post-apocalyptic novelette. The Remedy Files, Book 0. Written by Lauren Eckhardt. Narrated by Jess Nahikian. The Before. "This is not how our life is supposed to end," she cries into his arm, muffled by his skin so that the kids can't hear her. He can barely discern her words, but he doesn't need to. His thoughts have repeated the same line for days. This wasn't supposed to be how it all came crashing down, yet here they are. In hindsight, the warning signs were all there, yet they were ignored by the general population. More so here in the United States than in other countries. They should have been protected here. Somehow it all seemed to happen much faster than anyone could have believed. The ocean started the war, and man, not one to be outdone by nature, followed suit. No one knew who to be more scared of. The water as it swallowed the land to reclaim its dominance, or entitled men who stopped at nothing to assert his desires. Once full of abundance, colors, hope, and possibilities, the world had darkened with scarcity and fire to greed and addiction. The man gently strokes the woman's hair to calm her, to calm himself too. Focus on the strokes. The softness of the auburn strands as they pull through his fingers. That wasn't as easy to feel when the thiproxine was in their system, a numbing drug that was once outlawed, then turned legal by the government as a coping mechanism, and converted into global currency during the wars. Now, the silky strands are mesmerizing. If he focuses on her hair, he is glad he is off of it. The motion helps him breathe steadily, to root himself as the strong one in this new situation they found themselves in. A nightmare for any human. They were supposed to be off to college by now, as high school sweethearts who found love in each other and a passion for international diplomacy. While growing up next door to each other and playing in the neighborhood streets, they dreamed of traveling the world and bridging gaps between countries. They loved other people as much as they loved each other, and believed they could talk peace into those who were keen to gravitate to strife. Slowly, those dreams fell apart with one regulation after another, until they were grasping at a future that simply could no longer exist. The higher education ban was put into play first, colleges shutting down worldwide for a lack of wasting funds. Underground schools rose in their place, striving to offset the misplaced values, but that was only the beginning. Soon after, the increase of temporary high-risk travel bans between other countries became permanent. Airports closed. Commercial planes were grounded. Any others who tried to fly, blanketed by the starless night, were immediately shot out of the sky. Continents were secluded. Walls were constructed between countries to protect the remaining resources they had. The world they wanted so badly to explore had now been reduced to the country they were born in. People can always find ways to get what they want, though. Determination has proven to have no boundaries. Once countries depleted the resources they had, succumbing to nature's combative forces, they turned to infiltrate other countries with bombs that angered nature more. The oceans drank more land and filled with bodies of those who lost the fight to bombs, disease, and people drunk on the worst of sins. Now, here the man and woman are, hiding out. Somehow, when seeking refuge in this shelter, their dire state magnified. To add to the pressure of survival, they became parents virtually overnight. Kids themselves, now responsible for the lives of 6 other children, all lined up in the center of the room, sleeping under tattered blankets, away from the walls as though that slight distance could make a difference between life and death. All orphans, their parents long gone, hidden in a strange cave of sorts, covered by the cloak of what once was a library. One young boy is especially bad off, shivering in the corner of their human pile with teeth chattering regardless of the heaps of blankets stacked on him. They ran out of thiproxine 2 days ago. A throbbing migraine that didn't stop resulted, the worst hangover the man has ever felt. They all had headaches. That boy, though, developed the shakes on top of it, rotating between sweating and vomiting, and cries out from pain at all hours of the day and night. The woman spent hours trying to comfort him, holding the boy to her breast and rubbing his back while singing lullabies low and soft. Her mom would do the same to her when she was a girl. But she wasn't a mother, and most of all, she wasn't this boy's mom, and she was limited in her power. "Mommy," he would cry out, wrenching from her touch, even though all she wanted to do was help him. It wasn't fair that he should be alone in this. It wasn't fair that she had to fill this role. The man whispers, "I need to make a run tomorrow. He won't survive much longer if I don't get something in his system." "Focus on food, not the drugs." The woman clenches onto the man's fingers and moves them to her chest, pressing them against her heart. "I fear there's nothing out there except chaos and instant death." They both know this. There's only one choice that remains in this world: hide out and die a slow death, or adventure outside and die instantly. But he had to keep fighting. His dad did the same for his family before the night that changed everything. He shudders while recalling the men who decapitated the strongest man he knew, his broad-shouldered and bright-eyed dad with one swing of an axe. The drugged savages wouldn't remember they murdered to steal a bag filled with rationed goods as identified by the Green Cross, or the way the victim smiled at them with relentless love of humanity right before they swung. His dad would have given the bag to them if they needed it, just because that's the type of caring being he was. The men didn't even carry enough remorse to hide their faces or run away afterward. That was how much the world had changed. Survival was void of empathy, and any regard to humankind was long gone. They dropped the bag to the ground after pocketing the packets of food and thiproxine, and went on their way in a slow, leisurely stroll. The man had to watch it all, knowing there wasn't anything that could be done as he clutched his girlfriend's shocked and still form while they hid under a tarp in the back of the truck. Only once the men were long gone did they risk coming out. The man didn't let a tear fall out of his eyes as he drug his dad's body to the side of the house, covering him with firewood and striking a match. When the woman gasped, the man stoically replied, "This world is on fire anyway. I'd rather burn him before they do." His dad became yet another innocent victim of the world gone horribly wrong. The woman sobbed as she watched the smoke rise, her stomach rolling at the scent of scorched human skin, allowing her emotions to carry them both. That's the way they always worked. He was her strength. She was his heart. It's exactly why she refused thiproxine when the rest of the world inhaled it like air. She had to be the one to feel. Otherwise, no one would. One by one, their family had dropped off around them. After his dad died, then there were only two of them. The love story they had imagined come true, running through the world hand in hand, except nothing about it was romantic. The moment the sun breaks the horizon, the man stirs, feeling it in his soul, his movements slow as limited energy remains. They need food, or thiproxine. It's been too long. They can't stay here forever. They'll need to move again soon. He pulls on his boots and shoves their only knife in the back sole. He hates to leave the woman and kids with nothing, but he also doesn't stand a chance without at least one weapon to protect him. More threats exist outside than inside right now. He'll be quick. "Be careful," the woman whispers, and slinks her body between two of the girls, holding their skeletal bodies close for any warmth that can be generated. "I'll be back," he promises. When they were 5 years old, he pinky promised her that he would never break a promise to her, and he stood by that ever since. The woman keeps quiet, because deep down, she knows the truth. His first broken promise. She's always been able to sense when things are happening outside of her control. She felt it 2 days ago, and held on to him tightly ever since, begging him to not go outside. They were shrinking away, though. She wouldn't mind if it weren't for these children. They deserved a chance, and maybe, just maybe, he'd make it back safely, and these visions that flash through her mind of the outcome aren't anything other than the bubbling of fear. The man kisses her forehead, pushing his lips to her skin so fiercely he prays they'll leave an imprint. He doesn't know life without her. She'd been by his side since they were smaller than the children they were now watching over. She is the only reason he is fighting to stay alive. He lifts the drawbar from the slot of the door, groaning with the effort. Unlatching the locks, he looks back once more at the angelic silhouette of the woman, noting the rise and fall of her chest and her partly opened lips, dry and cracked from the elements. Slipping out, he carefully closes the door behind him and slides around lines of bookshelves that blocks the view of their hideout, his steps quiet on the worn carpet. Before he exits the double doors of the library, the site of their temporary sanctuary, he tightens the straps of the cloth mask around his face. The sliver of fabric isn't enough to block the scent of death, but it's a small barrier in hopes that he won't inhale the diseases that are everywhere. He steps, his boots crunching on trinkets left behind, covered by layers of dried mud. He'd rather think of them as pieces of artifacts than the potential of bones that he knows very well exist. It's quiet out here. The shrieks of the dying had stopped weeks ago. For the first couple of years of the world's demise, there was rarely a moment of silence. People screaming, whether in pain or not, as they tried to understand what was happening, how life could change so drastically. Everything was normal. Then suddenly, it wasn't. It was the fastest period of decline. Many people couldn't adapt to loss when used to a life of ease. The third world countries survived the best for the first half. They knew how to handle rougher conditions. Soon, though, it didn't matter if it once was a third or first world country. Everyone was on the same playing field. They had already scoured the buildings nearby. He knew there was nothing there. He'd have to walk further to find food or dig in the earth and hope that nature was still producing something of worth underneath the destruction. The glow of the sun was filtered by the fog, shortening his view. It had been like that for the past 2 years, no longer illuminating the brightness of this life, since anything good seemed to have disappeared long ago. The man and woman chose this location because of the ravaging destruction. It looked picked over, as though it would no longer be a target. This was before they realized they would have to find food for 6 other mouths as well. Those kids were left behind in the library to fend for themselves. Authority figures long gone, either by selfish desires or selfless attempts to save the kids. He couldn't be sure which one. Anything was possible. The man kept close to the abandoned storefronts, stepping over broken glass as much as possible. His boots had worn down from the miles put on them, a 17th birthday present before times had gotten worse. When his mom picked them out from bartering with a street vendor, he doubts that this is what she had envisioned for them. He's grown so much in the years since. He knows she would be proud of him. He's become like his dad. Quietly, the man's footsteps move about the rubble. He's careful, learning from past mistakes, aware that savages can be hiding anywhere. How disappointed they would be, though, if they attack him. He has nothing outside of the knife to protect him. But he also has his skin, and has witnessed one too many feats of cannibalism in the worst of us all. A side effect when thryprotzine mixes with relmoyide, a black market acid so deadly that the government actually tried to outlaw it despite loosening drug restrictions. He's learned to spot the wild red eyes, wide with hunger and desperation to fill parts of their souls that were negotiated to stay alive after their first hit of relmoyide. No longer human. Feral. Focus. Food. Where can he find more food? They need their strength and to figure out a plan to keep going. There were times that he wondered what the point of it all was, but if they didn't move, they would give up. They needed to believe that some place, somewhere, still offered hope of a different life. It would be too easy to roll over and give up, to let the destruction of this world overtake him. If he finds himself questioning what there is to live for anymore, he looks at her, the woman who he knew from the time he was 5 years old would someday be his wife. She will be, someday. They'll have the wedding of her dreams. The image of her coming down the aisle in a white gown as pure as her heart is the only factor that keeps him going most days. The dream has changed over the years, though. No longer would the woman's dad walk her down the aisle. Or would the man have his brothers standing next to him, or be able to look at his parents smiling and holding hands in the front row. His breath clogs in his throat, and he leans over to vomit. He has to hold on to faith that things can still shift. The world changed quickly once before. It can do it again, in a more positive direction this time. Hope and her love are all that remains. One foot in front of the other. He can do this. Then he sees it. The dusty strap of a bag sticking out from under a heap of broken wood from a collapsed building. He would have walked by it if he didn't recognize the bag. Underneath the layer of grime, it's bright orange, the same color as the duffel bag required for all athletic teams from his high school days of playing rugby. The man presses his back against the storefront windows, eyeing the surrounding area. This could be a trap, purposefully set up to bait distracted wanderers. When nothing unusual seems present, he knows he can't wait any longer. It's worth the risk. With long, powerful strides fueled by adrenaline, the man leaps over the rubble to pull the bag from its grips. It catches, and he knows he's been set up then. Someone will be on him soon, battling him for his own life. He tugs it again forcefully, and a white-as-snow arm jerks through the rubble with it. The man's stomach churns. He hasn't adjusted to seeing death, and he's glad for that fact. He knows if he gets used to seeing it, humanity has escaped his soul, and his life then is no longer worth fighting for. But for now, his heart still breaks witnessing it, and he murmurs a prayer over the body and whispers thanks for protecting this bag until the man could find it. Sliding from the rubble, ignoring the pain of the jagged edges as they clip at his legs, he breathlessly finds solace in a side alley. Hiding in the shadows of the metal fire escape stairs, he pulls open the zipper carefully, peeking inside to make sure an explosive doesn't greet him. Instead, the most beautiful sight he has seen in months presents itself. 20 packages of thiprotzine. Nutrients and numbing agents all rolled into one. This would help them. This would help the poor boy who suffers through withdrawal. Maybe he could finally move. They could make these last for the next week easily. It could give them strength to move on to a place that could provide more food options. A bonus, 2 tin bottles full of water so pure his throat dries at the thought of it running down his throat, and 3 cans of beans. He can already envision the smile on the woman's lips, the relief, the appreciation. He can feel his mom and dad watching over him, helping him, leading him exactly to what they needed to survive. Survive. They can do this. Suddenly, hope is burning strong within him. He zips the bag, holding it like a football close to his body, and he runs and runs, finding energy he thought had long ago seeped out of him, but that hope had replaced. The woman's smile. He could see it mirrored in the faint outline of the sun. She needs this reassurance. One more day closer to a better future. They'll make it out of this alive. They were destined to be together forever. He's always known that. The world has turned cruel, but it won't take away everything good, not if they hold on tightly enough. The man's footsteps suddenly slow. He crouches down, listening intently to the interruption of the piece. He feels the ground shake before he has a chance to detect the sounds. At first, he thinks it's a rumble of nature, another earthquake. He's prepared for that. He knows how to survive those by now. Then, the screams of the people awaken the quiet and terror within him. People. So many people. His heart races and he knows he should bolt, but he's frozen in place. Where did they come from? The stampede of frightened faces, twisted in anguish, rushed toward him. They're covering their heads with their arms for protection as they run. He looks to the sky and witnesses the outline of a sleek black plane, marked with a badly painted red skull on the side, the nose sharper than a bird's beak. The suicide bombers. They were supposed to be extinct, wiped out when the last of the rebel bases exploded. By the chaotic veering of the course of the plane, he could see the truth of it. Copycats, who wanted to be like the suicide bombers, were everywhere. If they discovered an old bomber plane, nothing could stop them from taking it to the sky. He could only pray no bombs remained. But by the fear pulsating the air, he knows the people running had witnessed something he hadn't seen yet. So the man ran with the masses, his legs pumping fast enough to move ahead of them. He cuts through a side alley, hoping speed is on his side to get back to the library and lose anyone else who thinks he may be one to follow. Moments earlier, he had thought they were safe, but he should know better than to believe in such a provisional term while living in an unpredictable, death-drilled society. His ears fill with ringing so sharp that he drops to the ground, writhing from the pain that shoots through his head. The heat scorches his skin before the light blinds him, the worst realization that life is ending. enveloping his body into a fiery inferno. Charred remains that no one would ever find are all that remain. Back in the cave of the library, the earth viciously convulses beneath the woman's and children's aching bodies, but none of them react to the pieces of drywall that fall from the ceiling. They are used to it by now. The woman, however, cries silently, the only one aware of the change in the charge of the air. She can feel in her bones that he is gone. She knows it's only a matter of time now. The smoke has picked up, snaking through the rubble above them like fingers of death. "It won't be much longer now," she mumbles, casting her words to the ears of the trembling boy with eyes shut so tightly together it's like somebody has sewn them. "It won't be much longer now," she soothes to him, the children, herself. The end has arrived. The after. One by one, the breaths around her cease. The boy in the corner stops shaking. His form finally relaxes into a slumber for eternity. The woman is relieved for him, grateful that his suffering finally ended. Now, she waits for her turn. But it doesn't come. Day rises, night falls time and again, and yet her eyes still open, very much alive against all her wishes. "Please," she begs out loud. "Please, take me." Death fell all around her unrequested for years, yet where is it when she wants it the most? She knows the truth. She can feel him. The man had left behind his body, but he had entered her. She is twice as strong, but she didn't ask for this. All she wants now is to pass from this world into the next and be in his arms again, far away from the dreams and love annihilated here. He wasn't going to let her die, though. He had promised that, and he never broke his promises. The stench of the little bodies next to her is overpowering. The woman can feel the pull to get up, to succumb to the fact that she is breathing without struggle, more than she deserves to be. She curses him, then immediately prays for forgiveness. She won't be denied the right to be furious that he left without her, though. Through the process, his departure empowered her even more. It's not fair. She didn't ask for any of this. She might as well leave this sanctuary and let her fate be in the hands of the wicked beasts that rule this life now. The world isn't a place people survived when they were trying to, let alone when they had given up all their desire to exist. It wouldn't be long before some calloused person decided their life was more significant than hers. She grabs an empty canvas bag on her way out and throws a book in it to pretend she has something of value that others may covet to increase her appeal. The woman leaves the library for the first time in weeks, marveling how she can gather the energy despite nothing sustaining her. Him. That's how. When the double doors clang loudly behind her, she covers her eyes, blinded by the bright rays that greet her. The sun hasn't shined like this in years, not without a thick layer of fog and smoke covering it. Her eyes had adjusted to the dark in absence of the light, and now the world has a clear glaze over it, showcasing the soul-crushing collaborative damage of nature and men. She can feel a rising within her spirit from the sunshine's heat, inflated by optimism, and she immediately swallows it down. Hope for what? This world has nothing left. There's nothing more she wants to live for. "Please let me go," she begs. She doesn't bother silencing her steps or hiding as she moves. She walks in open sight, pleading with any random threats to take notice of her and sink its claws in. The bag flaps loudly in her arms to draw the attention of lurkers. The woman keeps her eyes straight ahead to the horizon, not daring to look around. She doesn't want to catch sight of the man's body. She wouldn't be able to handle it. The last image she has of him is his lips pressed to her forehead, and she'll hold on to that forever. The woman lets her body stumble over the wreckage and rubble, not caring as she skins her knees and elbows, quickly standing afterward to continue. She can feel everything sharply, but she welcomes the pain, hoping that it's all one step closer to the end. Before the sun has a chance to lower, the edge of the city appears. Broken trees and browned fields replace the run-down buildings and fissured sidewalks. She made it miles through the city without seeing another person. She's truly alone. As the woman gets closer to the stark environment change, she spots a glossy red sphere on the ground. No, that can't be. She drops to her knees, crawling to it, waiting for the mirage to dissipate and reaching out to it with trembling fingers when it doesn't. Briefly, she wonders if she's been set up, as flashes from Snow White swarm in her mind. She doesn't care about the risks as her stomach tears through her skin in desperation to consume the apple. Her fingers wrap around the smooth skin, sinking into the browning spots, a feature that she would have discarded as trash back when abundance was taken for granted. The woman brings the apple to her mouth, sinking her teeth into it, juices spraying the insides of her mouth. The woman lets out a moan at the succulent sweetness and rests her forehead against the ground, chewing slowly, appreciative for a tiny gift she didn't realize she needed until she had it. If she wanted to die, she could have ignored the apple and continued to walk away until her body shrank to nothing. But it's an apple. She hasn't had nature-produced food in a solid 8 months. If it is laced with poison, it's well worth it. The sounds of feet crunching on the rubble behind her freeze her breathing. The woman knew this was a setup. An apple amid bleakness is too good to be true. Chattering voices accompany the steps. She lifts her head to see who is coming for her. Multiple people, not just one. This is what she was waiting for. The end. The woman hurries to eat the apple, chomping around the core until there's nothing left and her mouth is full of bits. She refuses to let them have any part of it. They can kill her, but the apple is hers. "Who's there? Don't move," a man calls out. The woman stares at them from her kneeling position, chewing, savoring the apple and her last few breaths in this forsaken world. She won't show them her fear. Besides, any true terror left her when he died. She would welcome whatever it was these savages wanted to do to her. She counts them. 7. 2 women, 3 men, a young boy and a young girl. "Beautiful day, huh? First pretty one we've had in some time," the oldest of the men states, as though they're back when times were normal and the conversations could be casual. If it's to confuse her, it could work. Normalcy is a craving each person has deep inside, whatever their definition of it may be, especially ramped since the apocalypse began. The woman knows this approach, though. She's seen it before. Exchange of niceties before slashing someone's throat. She doesn't play their game and remains silent, ignoring the ache that rises from deep within her and clashes with the perception of her mind. These people look normal enough, not like killers. They could have been her neighbors in her once pleasant subdivision. One of the women appears to be only a couple of years older than her. It's hard to shake the desire for companionship when one feels completely alone. but she knows better than to trust anyone. The oldest man speaks again.
Do you mind if we get closer to you? We won't hurt you.
The woman continues to stare, observing the demeanor of each person, searching for the threat of red eyes from the most evil of those who lost their souls to Relmoyide. The thing is, they all look so kind. She really must be lonely. The oldest man shuffles forward, and the others only take a step when he does. This isn't their first time approaching someone new.
We don't have any weapons. Foolish, I know. We also refuse to kill anyone, although I suppose we would be forced to try if any of us were threatened enough.
He rubs his neck, clearly uneasy at the thought.
It's just us. Who you see here is all we have. No one hiding out in the trees or anything, I promise.
The woman watches them from her kneeling position. She's not tense. There's no hint of the tremor that winds through her nerves. Her face and body are relaxed, outwardly accepting of whatever doom may bring. Her mind convinced this is where her story ends. The man continues talking while taking tiny steps closer.
We've been walking nonstop for months. We were a big group once, and we picked up others along the way. Most from our original group died. There's not much out here. The world is destroyed, and we're fighting to survive. We've been scouting for supplies and...
He nods to a short man who reluctantly slides a backpack off his shoulder and puts it on the ground, opening it up for the woman to see the contents, but she refuses to look.
We have a few things, as you can see. A little to keep us moving forward until we can find more. But no weapons, and no intentions to bring you harm, only to help.
The woman swallows her final apple bite. There's nothing I can offer you. I have nothing. No will to live either, so do what you want with me. I won't fight. The oldest man cocks his head to the side with feigned concern. Or maybe it's real concern. The woman must be delirious if she's thinking people still care.
You've outlasted some pretty bad situations for someone without a will to live.
The woman sighs and throws the apple core behind her. I wasn't always alone. Not until recently. The oldest man nods solemnly.
I understand that. We all have lost people. Not one of us knew the other until the recent journey. We've had to relearn trust. I'll admit, we've seen some not-so-good people, but their fates were decided before us. These people,
he motions to the group behind him,
are good seeds. We've been through a lot in a short time together.
The younger of the two women in the group steps around the man and boldly comes forward. The woman is tempted to react, but she stays firmly in place. The younger woman pours water from a silver canteen onto her hands. Reaching out to touch the woman with gentle, focused strokes, she washes away dirt from the woman's face. The woman winces from the first physical contact from someone else who isn't the man. But it feels nice, she has to admit. The younger woman cleans the woman's face with tender, circular motions. Once done, she takes her fingers and brushes them through the woman's hair. There. The younger woman steps back. We can see you better now. The woman wants to weep, but she gulps down the sobs. Kindness. She hasn't witnessed it from complete strangers in far too long. She tries to keep her composure together. Strength. She needs all she can collect. Tentatively, the group closes in and sits down on the ground, forming a circle with the woman as a part of it, as though officially welcoming her to become one of them. The woman looks around, with wide eyes, wondering what has altered within her with a simple touch from another human being, and this sudden change of fortune. She was convinced she was alone, but maybe she doesn't have to be. A younger woman sits next to her, sinking into the hard dirt like it's a cushioned chair. We've been walking for a while anyway, so we need a break. Here. She breaks a white tablet into 2 halves and extends one as an offering. Want one? Thyproxine. Yes, please. The woman exhales, reaching for the pill and swallowing it quickly, her body clenching before releasing the pain, drifting from her body like the soul of a ghost escaping. He was escaping her. I'm sorry. I don't want to be here without you. You have to leave, so I can leave too. Do you have more? She wants to avoid the agony again for as long as she can. She was once the bearer of pain, but she doesn't want that responsibility any longer. It isn't worth it without him. She will no longer feel like she once did. She would make sure of it. The younger woman shows her the count of what's left. Not much, but we'll get them. That one there, she motions to the short man, is a scientist. Right as we came across you, we were discussing the possibility of creating new batches instead of searching for leftovers. He thinks they're easy to reproduce. That's the brain of a genius for you. I wouldn't know where to start. The third man opens up another backpack and pulls out 2 cans of beans from its depths. With a rock, he cracks the lids and sticks crooked forks in both cans. He hands them to the boy and girl on either side of him. The woman watches in astonishment at the selflessness displayed. Most, including herself, would have taken at least 1 bite before passing it on. Her stomach rumbles in response, the apple fueling her desire to eat again. The third man tilts the bag to the woman so she can see the other contents inside. More cans of food and nothing else.
See? We are showing you everything we have. Nothing hidden. We are trusting you.
But I'm outnumbered, so you know there's little harm I can do anyway. The woman could sense these people were good, but she couldn't give herself over quite yet. They already had her mind rolling with images of journeying as a group, to be a part of something bigger than herself once again. And she wasn't sure if she could handle that so soon. The short man, the scientist, looks at her torn and dirt-stained clothes with disdain.
You've clearly been out here enough to know that makes no difference. Not these days.
He's right. A child could be murderous. No one is safe. The other woman, quiet, holding a bundle close to her body, has barely even looked at the woman. And what's in that? The woman challenges with a point. This group has been forcing the idea of transparency, but that's a big bundle. She has seen even the most innocent types transformed into grenade-slinging barbarians. Nothing would surprise her these days. The oldest man nods at the other woman. She glares at him for a moment before loudly sighing and giving in, pulling the blankets back to display the milky white skin and auburn hair of a tiny infant. The woman's heart clenches and she relents a gasp. You brought a baby into this world? She didn't mean for it to sound as judgmental as it did. For the past couple of years, life had only been about death, not about birth, so the reversed notion was hard to comprehend. The other woman stays quiet, wrapping the sleeping baby back up protectively.
We call her Hope,
the oldest man explains wistfully.
No one else has owned their previous name, ready to start anew. But the day the baby was born, the sun started shining again. She's a gift from the universe. It's proving it's ready to start over, and we're the lucky ones who have been entrusted with the opportunity.
The other woman holds on to the baby tightly and rocks back and forth on her knees, humming quietly. Very fitting. The woman gives in to her first agreement of this group. She wouldn't have considered herself lucky to outlive the man, the love of her life, the beat of her heart. But a blurry reason for why she survived has started forming, and maybe this strange faction, This proof of new life is it. The lanky boy, inches taller than her despite being at least a few years younger than the woman herself, looks up at the sky. We haven't heard a bird in weeks. Do you think they escaped, or are they all dead? I'm certain the last bomb destroyed them, or at least sent them running from here. A good thing. Less chance for the spreading of diseases, since they're skilled at transporting them.
Did you witness it? The bomb?
The stutter is the only hint of the heartbreak that the woman carries. The word carries the visuals of the man she loves blown into pieces. She could only hope he didn't sense it, didn't feel any of the horror when realizing it was coming straight for him. The oldest man confirms. We shifted directions once we heard it and saw the smoke rise. We thought we could help anyone who survived it, but once we saw the aftermath, we knew there wouldn't be much to find.
Except you, the younger woman adds. Did you come from the forest or the city?
The city, the woman admits wearily. The library had a hidden shelter. I've been there for weeks.
How did you survive a bomb of that magnitude?
The man saved her, just like he always said he would. The woman shrugs and responds instead. I'm not sure. There's a purpose, the oldest man says assuredly. There's a purpose for each of us. Could the woman believe in that? Could she have unwavering faith in a cause again, like the oldest man seems to have latched onto?
Where were you headed before you found me?
The woman asks.
The younger woman chuckles. We can't even tell you where we are now. Can you?
The woman shakes her head. We came across here in our escape from elsewhere.
That's the story of us all. We've been walking to escape exactly what we keep coming across.
We need to find a drone. The third man taps his chin, deep in thought. Or a compass and a map. We need to find more supplies in general, the scientist says, appearing less angry now that Thryprotzine has sunk in. The woman with the baby finally talks, tears displayed in her blue eyes. She's probably avoiding the Thryprotzine if she's nursing. Do we have to keep moving? When do we stop? I'm not sure I want to keep going like this forever. I mean, are we running from something or to something? Can anyone actually answer that? No one speaks, because no one knows. They all consider the possibilities of the alternative. Staying. Could they stay for once? Finally, the oldest man speaks again. She's right. At some point, enough will be enough.
But what if there are more people? Shouldn't we find them?
What if there's not? If we can find a drone, we can look for other life. Maybe we can take turns scouting surrounding areas. The woman inquires.
What about life further away? There has to be people alive in other countries, right?
The scientist shakes his head. I worked for a company who sent heat cameras on drones to scout the world after the last migration. We never found another soul alive out of this country. We were the last ones. His words send shivers down the woman's spine, despite the Thryprotzine. Should they be proud to be the last to survive? Or should they feel ashamed to outlive the rest of humanity? Neither feeling was good, and she was very tired of feeling it all. The scientist adds, I agree with her. We have to rebuild civilization, and the only way we can do so is by creating a new society. We can't be nomads forever. How do we pick a place? The third man looks around and shrugs. How about here? I'm not sure one city will be better than the other at this point. They've all looked the same throughout our travels. The woman frowns at the destroyed buildings in the city, wondering where the man, her love, was taken from her. But if she's going to live, she'd prefer to be where his soul is.
What if the ocean moves in on us?
The young girl, maybe 8 years old if the woman had to guess, communicates for the first time. The scientist sniffs the air as though he could smell it through the rot from here.
It probably will at some point, although there aren't as many threats to global warming now, so it should slow. But if it gets closer, then we move again.
So, we're doing this? The younger woman questions. We're starting a brand new world? The oldest man grabs a stick and presses it in the ground.
Now is as good of a time as any. We'll do a walkthrough to make sure the city is clear, but I think that bomb was the final clearing piece.
He turns to the woman.
This must be overwhelming. But what do you think? Would you like to join us in this? I can't help but be convinced there's a reason we met you, a reason we slowed down to sit with you, and a reason we suddenly came to this conclusion that maybe we could build a life here. I've always been a believer in alignment of fate.
The woman rubs her face, now clean and smooth from the other woman's compassion. How did her life shift so quickly, so soon? What else would she do, though? Walk the ends of the earth over and over until her body finally gives in? The woman and the man had big plans at one point to change the world, but they didn't get the chance. Maybe this is the reason she lived on. She could honor his legacy. We'll have to set rules and regulations if we're creating a brand new society. She's doing it. Committing. It's her way of saying she's in. She's a part of this now. The third man stands to pace.
I mean the obvious, right? No stealing, no murdering. That's a general start,
the younger woman snorts. Let's find some paper and outline them in detail so there can't be any questions about whether or not something falls out of line. There will have to be consequences, the woman with the baby adds.
And roles. Everyone should be required to contribute to the greater good,
the scientist interjects.
Yeah, you're both right. Rules have to be backed by consequences. And to be a self-sustaining community, we all need to have specialties. What's everyone good at?
The tall boy raises his hand as though in school. You can speak at any point, you know. The younger woman laughs.
Sirs, ma'ams, I come from a long line of farmers. I'd like to volunteer to grow things. If we can find seeds, I can sow them. Food, plants, anything we need. I'm good with dirt. Great. What about everyone else?
The girl says, if we can find a sewing machine, I can make clothes. My mama taught me how. I made this dress. She tugs at the blue cotton fabric that has seen better days. It was pretty at one point. The woman offers. I can build just about anything with the right materials. My dad and boyfriend's dad were carpenters. We helped them every summer since I could walk.
Excellent.
The oldest man looks truly impressed, and there's a stirring in the woman's heart. The need for acceptance. She misses what it's like to have a family. The security, the safety, the dependency. She doesn't want to depend on anyone ever again, though. No feelings, the woman emphasizes out of the blue. Heads snap up from the circle with full attention as they wonder if they heard her correctly.
What?
We should no longer be able to feel. No emotions, the woman repeats brazenly and points to the scientist. You said we can manufacture thryproxine, right? The scientist vigorously nods his head, the idea of new experiments charging him.
Anything that's been created once can be replicated. It shouldn't be hard to reproduce the formula. Why no emotions?
The oldest man asks carefully, his forehead producing more wrinkles as he tries to perceive the woman's drive. Emotions are exactly what caused all of this. The woman motions forcefully to the smokestacks over the trees, when instead she means somewhere behind her in the city, where the ashes of the man float about. Greed, selfishness, jealousy, anger. If people operated without emotions, history won't repeat itself. This isn't the first time humankind has tried to wipe the slate clean. They'll keep doing it unless something changes. Death. So much death. But people also killed others when they were drugged out on thryproxine, the younger woman points out. The third man stops pacing and responds with an idea.
If we build a new community as a controlled environment, we can better monitor motives. If we provide our people with all the drugs they need for survival, plus food and protection, they would have everything they need. No one would have to fight for what everyone already has.
But the pills block physical feelings too. Do we really want people to be born that way, with no understanding of either one? The younger woman pushes back.
Do we need feelings? We have our other senses to rely on for survival. That's all we need, just until we can better shape the future. Then we can adjust accordingly.
What do you think? The woman turns to the one with the baby. Would you want Hope to feel? If anyone has the right to argue against the idea, it would be the woman, the mother who was carrying the next generation. She'd be the one with the most influence. The mother pulls the cloth back from the baby's face and kisses her sweet, tiny cheek. No, she murmurs. I don't want her to know pain. Even if this is the last time she could feel my lips, it's worth it to save her a lifetime from what I've had to endure to bring her here. The oldest man climbs to his feet.
Okay. Let it stand that the new world will no longer feel. We'll scout what pills we can and learn how to make them. Once we have enough, it will be deemed a requirement for regular intake moving forward. Is everyone in agreement?
Slowly, one by one, heads in the circle nod, the realization of the weight of their decisions seeping in. They are no longer under the control of a government. They now have the ability to call the shots, to decide how to make this world a better place.
Okay then. Everything before today will hereby be called the Before, a period defined by terrible destruction, where humankind was reset. From here on out, we will be better than our ancestors. We will honor those in the past, but learn from the mistakes made.
The third man declares,
We will make this world everything it deserves to be. Humans will no longer hold the power to destroy it or themselves. Respect for one another and discipline will move us forward.
No more love. The woman thinks to herself, the last ounce of relief exiting her body as she swallows the second half of a thryprotzine tablet. Never again would she have to miss the man. For the first time in days, she breathes freely. This is no longer the end, only the beginning of a life worth living. "66 years later. A young boy was watched every single day by a little girl with long brunette hair. Maybe he didn't notice her since she had brown eyes. Everyone has dark eyes, after all, or everyone is supposed to. Except him. He has blue eyes, which captivated her attention from the beginning. She could have sworn she's been staring into those eyes ever since she was in a crib. That's how well she knows them. They were more familiar to her than her own. She'd watch those blue eyes with intensity when venturing outside for their limited hour of play, hoping nature would reveal the secrets behind them as they'd shift hues ever so slightly to match the open sky. She dreams about those eyes, even though she shouldn't. She's learned to find comfort within them, even though she isn't supposed to know what that is. Dreams and comfort don't exist. Or they're not supposed to. Not with the medicine. Deep down, she realizes this and keeps it hidden for that exact reason. No feelings. Ever. Besides, they're out of the level 0 through 5 homes for the first year. She's a big girl now, and she doesn't want to get in trouble and risk being moved away from the same level home he could return to. She can be different, but she can't let them find that out. He's different too, even though she can't figure out how. What if he dreams about her like she dreams about him? What if the board found that out, and banned him from the community forever. She wishes she knew him better. The little girl looks out at the perfectly manicured grass basked in the dawn light from her window as her level mate sleeps. Humming lightly, she considers what else she knows about this boy. He's quiet? No, maybe that's not right. He's challenging. She heard a teacher in her level call him that once. They had to implement a question quota rule because of him. He talks a lot, actually, so maybe quiet isn't the right word. He just talks to the adults more than he talks to the children. She wishes he had talked to her more. Drumming her finger on the sill, she thinks about what else she knows. He's always doodling. Somehow he finds a way to draw in the table or the ground, no matter how many times a teacher takes away his crafted tool. He also stares at books like they're the most interesting artifact salvaged from the before. She wonders if he can read them on his own yet. She can. She learned to read early, one of the fastest in her level. The other kids compared their scores to figure it out, but not him. He sat on his own, staring out the window. Like she's doing now, hoping to see what he saw, but nothing moves during the sleeping hours. She knows his name is Gavin, and he's the most interesting person in their community. He's been there every day of her life since the day she was born, until one day, he just wasn't. That's why she's thinking hard about him, trying to piece together clues about where he disappeared to. He went missing the same day she dreamed of him surrounded by bright lights and explosions. The same day they were abnormally corralled to the events and announcements stage after breakfast.
An event took place last night,
the board announced. The little girl was too busy craning her neck in search of the blue-eyed boy that she didn't hear what was said afterward until the eruption of monitors around her refocused her attention. Beeping so intense that the little girl had to press her hands against her ears to think straight. Even after the noise died down, the ringing reverberated in her ears. People were wheeled out of the announcements area in an endless stream of carts. The clinic would be packed if they all stayed overnight. She hoped the doctor had extra help because he would need it. The little girl turned her head to get a better view of the missing seats, observing who sat nearby to gauge who was affected. The boy was in her level, though. He'd either be in her row or the one behind her, yet he was nowhere in sight. Once enough medicine had been provided, and the monitors stopped beeping completely, the announcement continued.
I hereby decree Article A066 instated. Questions of what, why, when, and where are now illegal. Curiosity displays a trust deficiency in the ones protecting you. If questions are asked, you will follow the line of related consequences. For those within the levels, if a question is asked, you are banned from the annual dig. No passes.
The little girl had wrinkled her nose, thinking about when she had a question last. They rarely asked questions. Information was simply provided to everyone in the community.
No questions, no feelings, no choices,
the announcer had stressed.
If we want to survive, this is what we must do. We will not repeat the ways of the before. Agreed,
came the rise of the board behind him.
Agreed,
came the unanimous rise from the crowd in response.
And so it is.
The gavel on the podium sealed the fate of the newest law to be implemented. The audience was released, and the days continued on as always, except for the affected lives of 2 young children. The blue-eyed boy didn't return that day or the following days to the community. The little girl had heard rumors of what was announced on that stage, but if it were true, that would mean a little boy died. She refuses to believe he died because she can sense that he didn't. She wants to ask someone where Gavin went, but she isn't willing to be punished for asking questions. What if they move her and he comes back? She has to stay where she is. She has to believe she'll see him again. Someday. Some way. They wouldn't have let him die, right? She shakes her head. The community protects them. Their goal is to cultivate life into the world, to save the people from the same mistakes of the before. She knows this. It's drilled into her mind daily. She wonders if she's the only one who questions their intentions, though. She would ask about it, if she could. We hope you have enjoyed United, a young adult post-apocalyptic novelette, The Remedy Files, Book 0, by Lauren Eckhardt. Narrated by Jess Nahikian. Copyright 2020 by Lauren Eckhardt. All rights reserved. For more information about this book or other Lauren Eckhardt titles, please visit www.laureneckhart.com.